You see it everywhere, right? Tech billionaires spending millions, sometimes billions, trying to turn back the clock. Seems like every week there's a new headline about some wild diet or a 100-pill-a-day routine to cheat death. But what if the real secret to reversing the age of our most vital organ, our heart, isn't locked away in some futuristic lab? What if it's accessible to every single one of us? Okay, let's dive into this.
So here's our game plan. We're going to cut right through all the hype. First, we'll tackle the age reversal myth. Then, we'll look at the real threat we should all be worried about, the sedentary disease. We'll see what sugar is actually doing to your heart, and then reveal the scientific exercise plan to fix it. We'll look at the jaw-dropping results and finish up with the one big mindset shift that makes it all click.
All right, let's kick things off with a story that's got everyone talking. Tech entrepreneur Brian Johnson. He's basically become the poster child for this whole anti-aging movement, and he's made some pretty incredible claims. But the question is, do they actually hold up?
I mean, this is the kind of statement that grabs you, right? The idea that a 47-year-old can prove with data that he has the body of a teenager, it's super appealing. It makes it seem like aging is just another problem we can engineer our way out of. But when you look at the science behind the claim, that's where it gets a little complicated.
And this is the million-dollar question. These claims are all based on these biological age tests. They measure things in your cells to tell you how old you are on the inside. Sounds super high-tech and precise, doesn't it? Well, the reality is, a little different. The problem is what these tests were actually built for.
So think of it like this. Imagine you have a satellite that's designed to measure the health of a whole forest. Looking at the big picture, the entire forest, it's incredibly accurate. But what happens if you try to use that same satellite to zoom in and measure the health of one single tree? All of a sudden, the data gets really noisy, really unreliable. That's exactly what these tests are like. They're great for big populations, but for one individual person, not so much.
And get this, the margin of error on these tests is a massive plus or minus 4 to 5 years. So you could take a test and it says you're 30, then 2 weeks later you take it again and it could say you're 35 or 25. That's a 10-year swing. So that claim of being exactly 18 years old, scientifically, it's pretty shaky.
Okay, so let's shift gears. Let's move away from the extreme stuff that only a tiny fraction of people are doing and talk about a problem that affects almost all of us in the modern world. This is the thing we really need to be paying attention to.
We usually think of sitting around as just a lack of activity. It's neutral, right? It's passive. But the science is telling us something completely different. A sedentary lifestyle isn't just a bad habit, it's an active disease. It's a genuine pathological state that is causing measurable physical damage to your body.
And the consequences are, frankly, terrifying. For people who are chronically sedentary, their brain can physically shrink by 1 to 2% every single year. We're not just talking about forgetting where you put your keys. This is actual structural damage. And for your heart, it's even more direct. Its total volume shrinks, and the tissue itself gets stiffer and stiffer.
So to really get why this is happening, we've got to zoom in, way in. We need to go from the big picture of the organ down to the tiny molecules and see what happens when this sedentary disease smashes up against our modern diet.
Okay, so walk through this with me. You eat something with refined sugar. Boom, glucose floods your system. Your pancreas sends out insulin. Think of it like a key that's supposed to unlock your muscle cells to let all that sugar in for energy. But, and here's the absolute kicker, if your muscles aren't doing anything because you're just sitting there, those doors stay locked. So all that extra sugar is just floating around with nowhere to go, looking for something to stick to.
This sticking process, it's called glycation. Those extra sugar molecules start latching onto proteins in your heart tissue, especially the flexible collagen. The best way to picture it is to think about making candied fruit. The sugar coats the outside and creates this hard, brittle shell around what used to be soft. That is literally happening inside your body. Your heart tissue is becoming stiff and losing its ability to pump efficiently.
So, we've got a stiff, shrinking, candid heart. Is that it? Is the damage permanent? Well, this is where some amazing work by Dr. Ben Levine and his team comes into play. They set up a huge study to find out if this whole process could actually be reversed.
Now, this study was a 2-year marathon, not a quick sprint, and that's so important. For the first 6 months, the participants, who were all around 50 and had been sedentary for years, they just did moderate cardio, like brisk walking. The goal wasn't to destroy them, it was to gently wake up a system that had been dormant for decades. It was only after they built that solid foundation that the real work began.
And this was the core of it, the Norwegian 4x4 high-intensity workout.
Here's how it works. You go all out for 4 minutes, pushing your heart to 90% of its max. We're talking so hard you literally cannot speak. Now, why 4 minutes? Because it takes about 2 minutes for your heart to reach its peak output. Those next 2 minutes are forcing the heart to work at that absolute maximum, physically stretching out that stiff, candied tissue. Then you get 3 minutes of easy recovery, and you do that whole cycle 4 times.
So after 2 years of this pretty demanding schedule, what happened? The people in the study were now about 52 years old. Did all that sweat and hard work actually change the physical structure of their hearts?
The results were just staggering. Using high-res imaging, the scientists could literally see the difference. The hearts that started out stiff and shrinking were now bigger, stronger, and way more flexible. The elasticity of the heart muscle had improved dramatically. This wasn't some abstract number on a spreadsheet. It was a physical, visible transformation.
So what did it all add up to? When the researchers crunched all the numbers, the volume, the elasticity, how well it pumped, they found that the hearts of these 52-year-olds now had the physical properties of a healthy 32-year-old's heart. They had physically, measurably turned back the clock by 20 years.
Okay, the science is undeniable. It works. But this leads us to the biggest roadblock of them all, right? A 2-year commitment, 5 to 6 hours of intense exercise a week. How on earth is that possible in the real world?
I mean, that's the question everyone's thinking. It feels impossible. We've got jobs, we've got families, we have a million things to do. The barrier isn't just physical, it's in our heads. And that brings us to maybe the most important takeaway from this whole thing. The whole point is this. We've been putting exercise in the wrong category in our minds. For most of us, it's a hobby. It's optional. It's something we do if we have time. The critical shift is to reclassify exercise as hygiene. It's not a nice to have. It is as essential and non-negotiable as brushing your teeth.
Think about it for a second. You don't lie in bed in the morning and debate whether you feel motivated to brush your teeth. You just get up and do it. Why? Because you're very, very aware of the horrible consequences of not doing it. Cavities, pain, decay. The motivation isn't some burst of inspiration. It's the simple prevention of a known awful outcome.
And that's the real endgame, to weave movement into your daily life so deeply that it becomes automatic. When you truly grasp that sitting is causing your brain to shrink and your heart to turn brittle, exercise stops feeling like a choice. It becomes a necessity. It becomes a basic act of self-preservation.
And this brings us to one last really big question. If we accept that movement is as critical to our health as, say, clean water, then maybe we should stop putting all the pressure on individual willpower. What if our offices, our buildings, our cities, what if they were designed for default movement instead of maximum convenience? What if the grand staircase was the centerpiece and the elevator was tucked away in a corner? That's the real challenge this science leaves us with. How do we make the healthy life not just the easy choice, but the only choice?